A memo, typed in a Washington office, stamped classified. A memo that demanded Africa hand over not just its resources, but its future. Now imagine that memo slipping out, crossing oceans, and landing in the hands of a young African president who has never learned how to bow. That moment, that leak, set the world on fire. Because what was at stake wasn't just barrels of oil or ounces of gold. It was sovereignty itself. And when Washington, led by Donald Trump's allies, demanded that 60% of Burkina Faso's gold and oil be placed under foreign control, Ibrahim Traoré gave an answer no one expected. You have 72 hours. Africa's wealth is not for sale. This is the story of how one ultimatum collided with another, of how two ticking clocks, one backed by the dollar, the other by dignity, went to war. It all began with whispers in Brussels. European officials had seen the memo. It was blunt, written in the cold language of power: seize control of African gold mines, redirect oil exports through Western firms, increase IMF surveillance, and if resistance appeared, apply tariffs, cut aid, enforce sanctions. But the memo carried something more: arrogance. It assumed Africa would fold. It assumed that leaders like Traoré were too weak, too isolated, too poor to fight back. What the memo didn't calculate was pride. Within hours of the leak, copies were circulating in Ouagadougou. Students read it on their phones. Market women whispered about it over stalls of millet and cassava. Soldiers saw it pasted onto barracks walls. And Traoré? He stayed silent, for a moment, not because he was afraid, but because silence is a weapon. Finally, on a Friday evening, Traoré called an emergency meeting of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. The leaders met under dim lights in Ouagadougou, papers spread across a wooden table. The leaked memo lay in the center like a bomb. Traoré spoke first. They believe Africa is still theirs to command. They believe we have no voice, no choice. Brothers, they gave me a deadline. I give them mine. 72 hours to withdraw this demand. Or we shut every pipeline, every mine, every road they depend on. Mali's leader nodded. If they want a war of tariffs, let them have it. But Africa will not be starved again. Niger's general added, we control uranium. Without us, their reactors go dark. Let them threaten. We will answer. It wasn't just a meeting. It was the birth of a line no foreign power had expected Africa to draw. By dawn, the news had spread. Crowds poured into the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey. In Burkina Faso, students marched with painted signs, 72 hours for dignity. In Mali, women shut down markets holding banners, our resources, our future. In Niger, miners walked out of shafts, chanting, uranium is Africa's, not theirs. The air was electric. Fear was gone. A young Burkinabe student told a reporter, they think hunger will silence us. They forget. We have already known hunger. What we cannot live without is dignity. That voice echoed across Africa. In Paris, Berlin, and Brussels, panic spread. If Traoré shut down exports, Europe would bleed. West African gold filled European vaults. Sahelian uranium powered French lights. Oil from African wells kept industries alive. The memo's arrogance had backfired. What was meant to frighten Africa was now terrifying Europe. In Brussels, one official whispered, if Traoré makes good on his threat, the entire EU energy plan collapses. But Washington pressed harder. Trump's allies insisted tariffs would crush the Sahel within weeks. Starve them of markets, the memo said. They will crawl back. Except Africa was already preparing to walk forward. As Western leaders argued, calls flew to Moscow, Beijing, Delhi, Brasilia. China offered emergency loans. Russia proposed military advisors. India offered to purchase gold directly, bypassing the West. Brazil pledged food shipments. For the first time, Africa saw a path beyond Western dependency. Traoré summarized it best. If they close one door, we open another. Africa will not starve. Africa will trade. This wasn't just survival. It was strategy. The AES was using the West's own ultimatum to pivot into new alliances. Washington moved first. Banks in New York froze Burkina Faso's accounts. Insurance companies canceled coverage on cargo ships leaving West African ports. Cyber attacks hammered government servers in Ouagadougou and Bamako. The headline screamed, "Markets react to Sahel unrest." But on the ground, something remarkable happened. Farmers planted more grain. "If they cut imports, we will feed ourselves," one said. Engineers rerouted power grids to keep the lights on when European companies pulled out. Students set up volunteer cyber defense teams, monitoring servers through the night. It was resilience in real time. Instead of collapsing, the Sahel improvised. Traoré told his people, "They want us to believe we cannot live without them. But we have survived slavery. We have survived colonization. We will survive this too." The crowd answered with one voice, "Ace! Ace! Ace!" Then came the scandal that turned the fire into an inferno. A journalist in Monrovia leaked documents showing that American firms had already signed secret contracts giving them rights to 60% of Burkina Faso's future gold and oil production, long before the ultimatum. In other words, Washington wasn't just threatening. It had already carved up the wealth on paper. The revelation spread like wildfire. In Ghana, protesters held signs, "Our future is not for sale." In Nigeria, students stormed embassies demanding answers. In Senegal, parliament erupted in anger. How many of our minds are already stolen on paper? The scandal made one thing clear. This wasn't just about Burkina Faso, it was about Africa itself. Traoré responded with a move no one expected. He appeared on national television, not alone behind a podium, but surrounded by miners, farmers, students, and soldiers. With his hand on the shoulder of a coal-streaked miner, he spoke. "They told us we had 48 hours. We told them they had 72. Let me be clear. Africa's wealth will never again be signed away in secret. Not in mines, not in oil wells, not in boardrooms. Our sovereignty is not negotiable." The broadcast went viral. Within hours, clips were being replayed in Lagos, Johannesburg, Nairobi. Diaspora communities in London and New York shared it online, adding, "Finally, an African leader who speaks for us all." The next shockwave came not from Africa, but from abroad. In Paris, African youth painted murals reading 72 hours chasse freedom. In New York, diaspora groups marched across Brooklyn Bridge holding Burkina Faso's flag. In London, students occupied university halls chanting, "No more ultimatums." A Ghanaian American student explained, "They thought they were just pressuring one man. Instead, they awakened all of us." Meanwhile, cracks appeared in Europe. France pushed for harsher sanctions. Germany hesitated, fearing energy shortages. Italy argued for negotiation, worried about migration. The EU was no longer united. Traoré's defiance had not only shaken Africa, it had divided the West. A European analyst admitted on live TV, "If Burkina Faso holds out, it could inspire every resource nation from Congo to Venezuela. This is bigger than tariffs. This is a fight over who controls the future." Hour 60 of the 72-hour deadline. In Ouagadougou, tens of thousands filled the central square. They lit candles, sang revolutionary songs, and held up signs. Not for sale, not ever. In Washington, officials prepared contingency plans, more tariffs, asset freezes, even covert operations. But Traoré was calm. He walked among the crowd in uniform, shaking hands, hugging children, listening to elders. As the clock ticked into its last half-day, the world held its breath. CNN ran the headline, "Countdown to Confrontation." Al Jazeera framed it as, "Africa's Gamble for Sovereignty." In China, state TV asked, "Is this the beginning of a new order?" Inside Ouagadougou, the city transformed into a fortress. Volunteers patrolled streets, traders closed shops early and joined rallies. Universities canceled classes so students could fill the squares. At 8 p.m., he took the microphone in the main square. "They gave us an ultimatum. They wanted fear. Instead, they found unity. Look around you. Miners, farmers, mothers, students. We are Africa. And Africa bows to no one. The roar of the crowd echoed into the night. Behind closed doors, global players made their moves. China quietly offered emergency loans to buffer the Sahel alliance from sanctions. Russia proposed barter trade: oil for wheat, gold for machinery. India suggested expanding the rare earth mineral deal to include Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The West wanted Traoré isolated. Instead, he was becoming the center of a new network. A European diplomat whispered, "We thought he was a captain with no experience. Now he's rewriting alliances in real time." The clock struck 11:05 a.m. on the last day of the ultimatum. Only 1 hour remained. Crowds filled every square in Burkina Faso's capital. Farmers marched with hoes raised like spears. Soldiers stood guard but also joined chants. Women carried banners. "Sovereignty is not for sale." Global news anchors spoke in hushed tones. Will Traoré surrender or escalate? At precisely noon, the deadline expired. The world waited for a concession. Instead, Traoré stepped up to the microphone, face calm, voice steady. "The time has ended, but Africa's time has just begun. We will not surrender. We will not retreat. From this moment forward, no foreign power decides the destiny of Burkina Faso or of Africa. Our resources are ours. Our future is ours. And our dignity is not negotiable." This was not just a showdown between Washington and Ouagadougou. It was a test of Africa's soul. And in 72 hours, the message was clear: Africa will not be intimidated. If you believe Africa's voice must be heard, share this story. Comment below: will Traoré's defiance inspire other leaders? Is this the start of Africa's economic independence?